Show two videos right now. These kids were just playing, you know, soccer inside, and in the background, the duende appears.
The duende? Oh, I've seen this video before. It's fucking horror nostalgia right here. I remember seeing this video, bro.
And then the other video is this one. It's titled Aparición de un Duende.
Oh, I've never seen this one before. What the? I feel like that's more real than the other one. The other one I feel like is mocking this one.
Let me know if you guys have ever seen, have any experiences with duendes, gnomes, goblins, leprechauns, whatever the case may be. Let us know in the comments. The first one seemed a little fake, like you said.
I feel like the first one could be like a little 3-year-old toddler is wearing like a duende cloak or something.
He is deceased, but we want to know how he got away with this for so many years.
The FBI is trying to identify possible victims of William James Vahey. Days after the search, Vahey in Luverne, Minnesota.
On March 21st, 2014, 64-year-old William Vahey checked into this hotel room in Luverne, Minnesota. Unbeknownst to everybody around him, William had checked into the hotel using a fake name. He actually made an additional reservation across the street with his real name. But what happened next in this hotel room is utterly disturbing. Shortly after checking into this hotel, William went dark, and just a day later, his dead body was discovered in this bathtub right here. When local authorities looked into the man whose body they had discovered in this bathroom, they discovered that he was one of the most prolific in world history, with hundreds, if not thousands of victims across the world. And he had unalived himself in this bathtub before justice could be served. Today's episode is going to be one of the darkest we've ever done. This story needs to be shared, and justice needs to be finally served for these victims. I'm Colin Brown, and welcome to the Paranormal Files.
"19-year-old Angelo Hayes probably went through the most remarkable situation ever. He was riding his motorcycle in 1937 when he suddenly got into a bad crash and was thrown headfirst into a brick wall. And he was believed to be dead. They then buried him, and soon after, a suspicious insurance agent came to inquire about the policy Hayes' father had taken out on his son. Angelo was then dug out of his grave 2 days after his burial. And to everyone's surprise, he was still alive. He slipped into a coma. As his body required less oxygen in this state, Angelo managed to survive the ordeal. After a couple of surgeries and rehabilitation, Hayes lived to tell the tale of his live burial. He became a celebrity throughout France and also invented a security coffin complete with a radio transmitter, food locker, library, and chemical toilet, just in case anyone found themselves in his same awful situation.
Forced his child's abuser to dig his own grave and unalive himself. What this dad did to protect his daughter has had the entire internet debating how far you would go to protect your children. Some people are calling this man a vigilante hero. Vyacheslav Matrasov was 35 years old and worked as a rocket engine factory worker in Russia. He had a 6-year-old daughter, and as any dad should be, he was fiercely protective of his child. He had a good friend, Oleg Svidriov, who was 32, and he's on the left in this picture. Now, Vyacheslav really trusted Oleg, so much so that he actually had him to babysit for him if needed for his family. Things would all change in the most horrific of ways when Vyacheslav discovered that there was some absolutely harrowing footage of Oleg the babysitter and his daughter. It made him absolutely sick to his stomach to find video evidence of his so-called friend abusing his child. The horrific video captured Vyacheslav's child crying out, "Oleg, that's enough. I can't take it anymore. I want to go home." Now, Vyacheslav was absolutely enraged by this deplorable video, as you would be. He immediately confronted Oleg. He took Oleg to the forest and forced the man to dig his own grave. He then made him unalive himself in the grave. In 2022, the father was facing a prison sentence for Oleg's murder. But public support was absolutely outstanding, and petitions were signed. Thousands and thousands of people got behind this dad, and multiple people also donated towards getting him his legal fees paid for. It was later deemed that the injuries to Oleg were sustained by Oleg himself, and Vyacheslav was given a lesser sentence for inciting the man to unalive himself. He served just 12 months before being released, and the whole community were absolutely ecstatic to have him back.
She had a first-hand experience with Ted Bundy. So she's a Ted Bundy survivor. She was waiting for the bus. She was at the bus stop, but I guess it was late or it was delayed. And then, you know, the infamous tan Volkswagen bug-looking car pulls up. And then how she said it, a handsome driver pulled up and was like, "Where are you headed?" So she goes, "I'm going to the university." He answers back, "I'm going to the university too. Hop in." He looks like a trustworthy person. He looks like he's a college student. He decides to get in the car. First red flag that she notices, but doesn't really think too much of it, the passenger door didn't have a handle on it. Then he decides to take a detour. She notices right away. She's like, "This isn't the way to the college. Are you going the right way?" And then he's like, "I don't know if you mind, but I have to make a quick pit stop at the zoo." Then they pass the zoo, and then that's when she's like, "Wait, I thought you were doing something at the zoo." And he's like, "I said near, not at." He's basically getting to this part where there's a bunch of trees. She's thinking he's about to try to have or try to make out with her, right? And it's gonna have to be awkward because she doesn't want that. Then out of nowhere, they stop. He shuts off the car, inches closer to her, and then whispers in a low voice, "You know what? I think I'm gonna kill you." Out of nowhere, he just starts choking her. She still thinks it's like a weird, sick joke, right?
She's like still giving him the benefit of the doubt.
She knocks out. She wakes up on top of a park bench, right? And he's basically waking her up. You know when like you're knocked out and somebody slaps you awake?
Yeah.
He's choking her in and out of consciousness, like.
He is deceased, but we want to know how he got away with this for so many years.
The FBI is trying to identify possible victims of William James Vahey. Days after the search, Vahey in Luverne, Minnesota.
On March 21st, 2014, 64-year-old William Vahey checked into this hotel room in Luverne, Minnesota. Unbeknownst to everybody around him, William had checked into the hotel using a fake name. He actually made an additional reservation across the street with his real name. But what happened next in this hotel room is utterly disturbing. Shortly after checking into this hotel, William went dark, and just a day later, his dead body was discovered in this bathtub right here. When local authorities looked into the man whose body they had discovered in this bathroom, they discovered that he was one of the most prolific in world history, with hundreds, if not thousands of victims across the world. And he had unalived himself in this bathtub before justice could be served. Today's episode is going to be one of the darkest we've ever done. This story needs to be shared, and justice needs to be finally served for these victims. I'm Colin Brown, and welcome to the Paranormal Files.
After purchasing a cassowary, one of the most dangerous birds, 75-year-old Marvin was attacked. He was out in the field with it when he fell and the 6-foot-tall bird began to attack him. With its razor-sharp 5-inch-long claws, the bird began kicking Marvin and leaving brutal and deadly injuries all over his body. Dozens of lacerations were made across his face, neck, back, abdomen, thighs, legs, and right arm. But the final blow came when the bird's deadly talons sliced through Marvin's brachial artery, the major blood vessel of the upper arm. The wound was catastrophic and blood poured from his body at a very alarming rate. 911 was called and emergency responders rushed to the scene, finding Marvin clinging to life, his body covered in deep wounds. They did everything they could to stabilize him, but the blood loss was too severe. He succumbed to his injuries just moments before reaching the hospital. The cassowary is no ordinary bird. It's a living weapon. Often called the most dangerous bird on the planet, it possesses the power to disembowel a human in seconds. With dagger-like claws and a powerful kick strong enough to shatter bones, there is no doubt that this is one bird you never want to cross. But perhaps the strangest part of it all is that the very same cassowary that had just brutally killed a man was simply auctioned off and sold to another buyer.
First time I posted about this case, it got banned because it was so horrific. So if you're seeing this video now, maybe watch it right now before it gets taken down again. It was 2016 in Florida. Austin Haroof had grown up in Palm Beach Gardens with his younger sister Haley. His parents had divorced when he was just 13, but he reported that his relationship with his parents was pretty good. Although his dad could be quite angry and have a temper at times, and his mum was quite strict with household chores, they did seem to be good parents. His dad was keen to spend time with him, and his mum was very motherly. And this is all according to Austin himself, as taken from the psychiatric report, but we will get into that. As a younger kid, Austin did get bullied a little bit for being overweight and having acne, which made him quite insecure. Now, while in elementary school, he did actually suffer with sleep paralysis, which I don't know if you've had, but is really, really horrible. He said it made him feel like he was being abducted by aliens. As he got older, he was a typical college kid and started drinking at the age of 18, but usually took it too far. Sometimes he would get so drunk he would black out. He was often pressured by other frat guys to drink loads and said it stopped him feeling as anxious. However, he started becoming really concerned with health and fitness and doing bodybuilding, so he decided to stop drinking. This was the summer of 2016. That summer he'd been using W every other day but stopped after getting, quote, weird feelings. Now, as I said, he did start doing bodybuilding and he was posting videos on social media about this. He would talk about how negatively he felt about the use of S-roids because what they do to your body isn't natural. He also started becoming obsessed with wanting to be a rapper and would call himself Osty Frosty and regularly uploaded videos singing and rapping. In one particular video, he joked that he had a normal side and a psycho side. Now, in some videos he would speak in strange voices, and one video ended with him screaming and swearing at the camera. He went to see his girlfriend Katie in August 2016, and one evening she noticed that he stayed up all night with obsessive thoughts about his music career. In the 2 weeks prior to the 15th of August, he started becoming very different. He was very overly friendly with people and would start crying about their problems. He told his girlfriend he'd begun to feel fearless and like he had a special power. At this point, he was working at a dentist's and started saying that he believed he could do magical things to the water there. He started to fast and think of himself as a Jesus-like figure. Then things changed and got very dark. He started becoming terrified of the devil and was convinced he was going to be killed in his sleep. He got obsessed with horoscopes and convinced himself that he was part human, part horse. It was clear he had become very confused and very distressed. On the morning of the 15th of August, no one had any idea of just how many lives were about to be irreparably changed forever. Austin strangely decided to run 3 or 4 miles to his dad's house shortly after 9 a.m. However, he wasn't just running normally, he was running on all fours like a dog. He was also running in the middle of the road because he believed he was invincible. He also sent a weird text to his mum that morning saying, "No matter what I say to you, I am protecting you, even when you think I'm evil." His mum asked what he meant and he replied, "F off." When he arrived at his dad was a bit concerned about him and tried to take his car keys off him. But Austin was really angry about this and jumped onto the hood of his car, so the dad gave the keys back. He then went to someone called Sam's house and jumped on his car too because he felt like an acrobat. Later that day, he attended a bit of a gathering with some of his friends, but was acting again very strangely. He took a beer, poured it on his hand, and said that he was drinking through his hand. He then ended up going for food with his family that night, but on the way there, jumped into the back of the car because he thought he was a dog. Now, while at Duffy's restaurant, he felt trapped and decided to run to his mum's house. While en route there, he came across what he called a strange figure and got really scared and ran away screaming in terror. That's when he came across the house of 53-year-old Michelle Michon and 59-year-old John Stevens. What happened next is absolutely horrifying. The couple were, by all accounts, absolutely lovely people. They were just really calm, kind, and friendly. In a seemingly random attack, he approached the pair who were innocently sat watching TV. He pulled out a knife and started stabbing them both in a frenzy. A brave neighbour, Jeff Fisher, heard the commotion and called 911 and then ran to intervene. Now, he was also stabbed repeatedly by Austin, but thankfully managed to survive. Tragically, Michelle was beaten to death by Austin and John was stabbed to death. At some point, Austin picked up a bottle of bleach thinking that it was alcohol and drank it. He also crouched over John's body, grunting and howling, tearing off chunks of his flesh with his teeth. He literally tried to eat the face of his victim. When police arrived, they had to taser him and get control of him with police dogs. Now, Austin actually reportedly remembered very little and only remembered waking up in hospital. He was tested for substances but was actually clear. He had a full psychiatric review, which is where most of my information on this case came from. He was diagnosed with bipolar with psychotic features. He was sent to a secure mental health facility and was found not guilty of murder by reason of insanity.
However, coined the phrase, "You can't make this stuff up," might have known the story of real-life boogeyman, Albert Fish. A slight, elderly man with grey hair, no one suspected the kindly single father of being sadistic child murderer and cannibal.
One of the most mysterious / disturbing cases that a lot of people have seen. So 10 years ago, right, this Dr. Joseph Whiter, he was brutally beaten. The pictures are mad freaking disturbing, but they actually got leaked. These are the pictures.
What the fuck? Wait, so if this happened 10 years ago, why are you talking about this now?
The case resurfaced. It's being talked about again. It's under investigation again because the main suspect, who actually confessed, so he was actually classified as a murderer, he said that he did it, but now 10 years later he's saying that he was just a witness.
So he didn't do it.
He didn't even kill a doctor. That's what he claims. He's claiming that the reason why he confessed was because he was so in shock when he was shown the morgue pictures.
So he panicked and said that it was him?
Exactly, bro.
So if he didn't kill the doctor, who killed the doctor?
Well, if you guys do want to find out how this crime was solved, tune in to Sleeping Dogs on March 22nd in theaters, starring Russell Crowe,
Martin Kasokis, Karen Gillan, and many more. You don't want to miss this. This is one of the most entertaining, thrilling murder mystery movies of 2024.
Get your tickets. We'll see you at the show.
This depraved pedophile just couldn't stop committing crimes. This is 66-year-old Karamat Mansourabadi. So Karamat is from Wisconsin, and in 2023, February 2023 to be exact, reports came in that he had assaulted a child. Obviously, the police wanted to follow this up. They went to his home, they conducted an interview, and they felt like that was enough evidence to arrest Karamat. So he was arrested for the essay of a child, but he was then let out of jail. But something that investigators didn't know is that they had found even more evidence when they searched his property. You see, in February of 2023, when investigating the SA claim, they took Karamat's cell phone into evidence. But it was a few months later when they actually started going through the cell phone when they found some disturbing evidence. On Karamat's cell phone, they found over 30 CP or CSAM images that he had downloaded from the dark web. So he was then rearrested, brought back into custody, and his bail was then set at $1.8 million, ensuring that he wouldn't be able to leave jail until his trial. So the trial hasn't happened here yet, but I really hope that this guy gets put away for a very extended period of time.
There's a killer on the loose right now in Utah, and this poor girl has yet to receive any justice. Just before 6 a.m. on Saturday, 20-year-old Lindsay Van Orman was leaving her boyfriend's house in Mill Creek, Utah. She was only a block away from her home when she accidentally struck a cat in the road, so she put her hazards on and got out to help. This was near 3051 South, 2300 East, near Maverick gas station. While she was helping this cat, police believe that a light-colored Nissan Titan going 40 miles per hour hit her. And instead of getting out to help her or calling the police for help, they just left her there, dying in the middle of the road, all alone. Lindsay was taken to the hospital where she sadly died later that night due to how severe her injuries were. The Unified Police Department has since released 3 videos of the killer's vehicle, and like I said earlier, they believe that it's a light-colored Nissan Titan with a rack on the back that now has a broken passenger front headlight. The killer was seen turning onto 2700 South, 2000 East just minutes after they hit Lindsay. This front porch video from a house down the street captures the exact moment that it happened. You can see Lindsay's car stop with the hazards on and then 3 cars pass by. First a dark-colored sedan, then a white truck, and then the Nissan Titan in question, which turns out to be the person who hit and killed Lindsay. The Unified Police Department believe that 2 other vehicles may have witnessed this happen, one of them being a black SUV that may have stopped behind Lindsay after she got out to help the cat, and they may have actually witnessed her being hit by the truck. So if this was you, or you were in the area and could have possibly seen something, please come forward and help this killer be caught. This is the footage from the Maverick gas station near where the incident happened. It's definitely way more clear and shows a good picture of the suspect's truck. Someone has to know who this car belongs to, and you need to come forward and do the right thing, because nothing is worse than not knowing who took your loved one's life away. Lindsay was only 20 years old, and she was described as always happy, always dancing, and incredibly compassionate. She did not deserve this. Her family set up a GoFundMe to help with hospital bills and other expenses, so I'll leave that here. If you have any information at all, please call 801-840-4000 and reference this case number.
When a teenager was out late hiding from his parents, he spotted his dad driving past. He had no idea he just witnessed his dad disposing of his mum's dead body. It was the 25th of October 1987 in New Rockford, North Dakota. Kathy Bonderson was a 35-year-old nurse working in the local hospital. She was married to Robert Bonderson. At around 2 a.m. on the day in question, the pair were arguing over their teenage son, Jamie. He'd worried them by not returning home, and Kathy was particularly stressed because she was going to be late for work. It's believed that Robert looked for Jamie and was unsuccessful and returned home. At 2:30 a.m., Jamie, who was parked with his girlfriend out near a bridge, spotted Kathy's car. Now, Jamie actually ducked low to avoid being seen by his parents. He had no idea what he'd actually just witnessed. An hour later, Kathy's car was found on fire. Tragically, she was in the passenger seat, deceased. Now, a sheriff called Ed Alamaris claimed that the fire began due to a freak accident in which Kathy had crashed the car and it had set on fire. He said that her body must have been flung over to the passenger side. However, clues at the car indicated this was no accident. Her car keys were found undamaged on the floor of the car, which was strange as the whole of the interior had melted. There were also no sort of tire marks indicating that there had been any kind of crash. There was also no structural damage to the vehicle indicating that there had been any impact. There was also suspiciously a can of petrol found nearby. The autopsy also indicated that Kathy had been killed prior to the fire, as she had no carbon monoxide in her lungs. Injuries to her neck suggested she'd been murdered. Despite all of this, the stubborn sheriff decided not to change the ruling of the death from an accident to a homicide. Years later, in November 2005, the case was finally reopened. By this point, the sheriff had passed away. Investigators started looking into Kathy's husband, Robert. By this point, Robert had moved to Wyoming. Police re-interviewed him, and he tellingly went missing as soon as they did so. It wasn't until April 2006 that police discovered his dead body in a remote cabin in the woods. He had taken his own life. Investigators determined that Robert was the real killer of Kathy. He had the opportunity to kill her, and he also had a motive. It was revealed that he'd been seeing multiple different women while he was with Kathy. He'd also taken out a huge life insurance policy prior to her death. Jamie, Robert's son, also confirmed that it was Robert that was driving Kathy's car on the night of the murder. Jamie's girlfriend, who was with him at the time, also confirmed this.
This disturbing Venezuelan video is absolutely awful, and whatever you do, don't go searching for it. In January of 2018, a gruesome video went viral in Venezuela and Latin America. Many people claim this video came from the Middle East or India, but it indeed did come from Venezuela. This clip highlights the issue of forced labor and people trafficking in Venezuela, as many who work in the illegal mines tend to be migrants. The victim in this video has still yet to be identified and more than likely never will. What is known is that the victim was from Guyana and arrived in Venezuela to work the illegal mines. Why he was murdered is up to debate, but according to some reports, the victim was stealing or being in cahoots with people he shouldn't have been with, and this could possibly be why he was murdered. In one article, it says the victim's murder was ordered by a farmer named Tilson. Allegedly, he ordered the murder to send a message to his workers who stole from him. This seems to be the reason for the killing, as in the video you hear a man talking, accusing the victim of being a thief. The video is 2 minutes and 16 seconds long and is extremely hard to watch. Whatever you do, never go searching for it. In the first 15 seconds of the video, the person filming, who may be the farmer previously mentioned, roughly states, "This is a message to all of those who want to rob from my farm. I am the greatest in Venezuela." All while the statement is being read, the camera is fixated on the victim's face. The victim is lying on the ground on his back and is gagged with his hands tied. The victim looks young, and if I had to guess, is either in his late teens or early 20s. As he lays there waiting for his fate, the fear in his eyes says 1,000 words. After the statement is read, the brutality begins. A man then enters shot who has his face covered and is carrying some sort of knife. He bends down next to the victim and begins slicing off his right ear. The victim makes no noise, but he scrunches up his face and closes his eyes as he absorbs the pain. The gang member then moves over to the victim's left ear and slices it off. Once both ears are cut off, the victim lets out painful sighs. The killer then appears to hand the knife over to the person filming, and in a POV type of shot, you see the person filming waving the knife around while accusing him of being a thief, while saying, "This is what would happen to anyone who steals from me." The victim tries to plead his case and his voice cracks and breaks several times. You literally hear the fear in his voice. A man then enters shot who is the same man who cut off the victim's ears, but this time he is carrying a machete. The killer then takes the machete and slams the blade down against the victim's throat, hitting his Adam's apple area. Blood erupts from his neck, shooting up in the air, and you begin to hear the sound of gurgling blood. The victim instinctively sits up and blood pours out like a river. In a matter of seconds, his entire chest is covered red in blood. It looks like you kind of poured a bucket of red paint all over him. The noises you hear at this point are like squeals, and it's honestly horrific. The killer then takes the machete and slams the blade twice onto the back of the victim's neck, and the noises become even more horrific. The killer with the machete then takes the blade and strikes the victim several more times in the back of his neck, and at this point the victim appears to pass out or pass away. The amount of blood in this video is insane, and the quality of the video is actually good, making it even worse to watch. Because as we know, in most of these videos, the quality is pretty bad. The video then concludes as the victim is lying in a pool of his own blood, half decapitated. The fear in the victim's eyes really stick with you, and it's just sad. And what makes the video even worse is the fact that the victim is extremely young, maybe between the ages of 15 and 21. This is just another example of the disturbing world we live in, and this is just awful.
Soccer player that was murdered after scoring an own goal for his team and then losing the game.
I've heard about this before.
Do you know his name or not?
I don't know his name.
His name was Andres Escobar. He was a Colombian player, yeah. This all took place during the 1994 World Cup. Colombia were one of the favorables to win. Fans had high hopes. Their first game was against Romania, and they ended up losing 3-1, which obviously triggered and angered the gangs that were betting on Colombia to win. The players have received death threats, even the manager saying how, yo, if you play this midfielder, we're gonna gun down the entire team. This one, the infamous game against the US. Around the 20th minute, a US player was going to cross it into the penalty box, and Andres Escobar, who was a captain and also defender for the Colombian team, he was going to cut the pass by sliding, but he accidentally ended up scoring an own goal. Crazy thing is, during that time, the same time he was playing, his sister and her son were watching the game. The son told the sister, "Mommy, they're going to kill Andres, aren't they?" She was like, "No, sweetheart, people aren't killed for mistakes. Everyone in Colombia loves Andres." That game ended up ending in a 2-1 loss for Colombia. A couple days after, he decides that, you know what, I'm gonna go bar hopping. And then while they're there, some people start insulting him. Like, what the fuck happened about the own goal? Saying like, "Fuck you, you're the reason why you lost us the game." Yeah. And then obviously he sees the gravity of the situation. He ends up going to his car. Out of nowhere, you hear 6 gunshots. But after each gunshot, they screamed out, "Goal, goal," like the way the commentators be screaming. And then
No. On tonight's episode, we're at one of the most haunted places in all of America, the completely abandoned Norwich Asylum here in Norwich, Connecticut.
So we did electric shock therapy, lobotomies, sterilizations. I don't go in that building alone. I don't. I will never be in that building alone again.
So somebody tried to murder you while you were here a year or two ago?
Yeah, June 4th, 2022.
That's crazy. So there were 2 here in this building alone? A month.
A month.
Wait, where did that come from?
I just saw the thing, Kyle. Holy crap, I just saw the thing. Is that my smoke?
Oh my gosh.
Please be with us this evening as we visit a place that truly has been touched by an unspeakable darkness.
Was that door open last time?
I don't like investigators.
Yo, what the bro? Something just came in here. Both Connor and I just have a really bad feeling right now.
I'm here.
Scream.
No.
A woman who was burned alive testified at her own murder trial. Judy Malinowski bravely addressed the camera after being burned alive by her ex-partner. She'd grown up in Ohio and had a happy childhood. She was a stunning beauty pageant contestant and was homecoming queen. Sadly though, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and after battling the illness and winning initially, she was told the cancer had returned. At this point, she was a mum to 2 young daughters and she was really struggling. She had surgery to try and battle the illness, but she was in a lot of pain after a hysterectomy. She became addicted to opiates and eventually would move on to the substance H. It was at this point, when she was really vulnerable and sick, that she began dating Michael Slager. The pair had met online and she had no idea he had a criminal past. He'd been convicted of stalking, child endangerment and domestic assault. Now Michael made life much worse for Judy. He would buy her substances and use these to control her. She tried going to rehab in 2015, but Michael liked how addiction made her easy to control. The couple became really toxic, and in one horrific incident, things would turn deadly. CCTV captured a shocking incident on the 2nd of August 2015. The pair got into an argument at a petrol station and Judy threw a can of fizzy drink at Michael. He responded by throwing petrol all over her. He then went back to his car, grabbed a lighter and set her on fire. She instantly went up in flames and horrified onlookers scrambled to ring the police. Judy was rushed to hospital with 3rd-degree burns covering 70% of her body. She became blind and lost her fingers and her ears. She battled on for 700 days, undergoing multiple surgeries. Eventually, though, she did succumb to her injuries. But brave and intelligent Judy recorded a video statement against her attacker. Just prior to her death, she documented what had happened and who was to blame. In order to do this, however, and to be obviously sober enough to testify in potentially a trial further on down the line, she had to be taken off all of her painkillers, so she was understandably in absolute agony to do this. She knew it would be worth it, though, to see her ex-Michael be put behind bars for what he did to her. She stated, "I don't think words can describe what it feels like to have your whole body set on fire. I thought for sure I was dying. I just prayed to Jesus to please forgive me for my sins and to take care of my children, and that was it. I blacked out. I don't remember anything until I woke up in the hospital." One professional stated that he had never seen a trauma like that on a human body that was not deceased. Michael eventually pleaded guilty and was given life in prison.
These are twisted murder cases you've never heard of, and this is a massive trigger warning. This case takes place in Indonesia on May 12, 2016. Ino Ferrara was an 18-year-old woman who had recently graduated from a vocational school, and after graduation, she began working in an office of a plastics factory. The factory was some time away from her parents' home, but it did have accommodations for both men and women that was separated between genders. Ino lived in the company's accommodation just outside the factory, and every week she would return to her parents' house for a night or two and spend time with her family. Ino was the 4th of 7 children, and she and her family were followers of Islam. And because of this, she was arranged to be married to a man at some point. However, in April 2016, Ino was walking back to her accommodations after a day at work when she bumped into a teenager who was referred to on the media as R.A. The two talked and exchanged numbers, and for the next month the two texted often and started somewhat of a relationship. At the time, R.A. was 16 and was a student at a neighboring high school. On May 12, 2016, Ino asked R.A. to come to her accommodation. She told him because of the arranged marriage, the month-long relationship had to come to an end, and the two decided to meet to say goodbye. At 11:30 that night, R.A. arrived at the women's section of the accommodation. Ino met him and at the gate let him in, and the two talked in her room. Inside, the two spoke for about 30 minutes and began to kiss, but before long, R.A. began to remove his clothes, but Ino told R.A. she had no interest in anything further. She was worried about the risk of getting pregnant and ignored his advances. Feeling angry and rejected, R.A. got dressed and left Ino's apartment. He then stood in the section between the female and male dormitories, and it's here where R.A. stumbled across 2 men. 24-year-old Rahman Hatano and 24-year-old Haman Hoparati. These 2 men worked at the plastics factory and stayed in the men's dormitory. The 2 men asked R.A. what he was doing, and he said he had been in a relationship with a woman who worked in the plastics factory, but the relationship had just come to an end. They all talked for a while, and the 2 men then wanted to see which factory worker was his girlfriend. and they then told him to take them to her room. There was a gate separating the girls' dormitories so nobody could get in, but RA didn't close it properly, so the three were able to get inside. The three then crept up to Eno's dormitory and twisted her door handle, and it was unlocked. The three then entered her room and stood over her as she slept. Ramad and Haman both recognized her from working with her. Haman had worked in the same section as Eno and had taken a liking to her. He even got her number from another worker and sent Eno messages, but Eno never replied to a message he sent. Ramad also knew who Eno was. He claimed that she called him ugly and that his skin was too dark. Iman then got one of the pillows off Eno's bed and placed it over her mouth and began to smother her. Eno then woke up and a struggle ensued. Iman then pulled a fork out of his pocket and began to stab Eno in the face multiple times, while Ramad pinned her down. The two men then ordered RA to grab a knife from the kitchen, however, he couldn't find one. So he went to the garden area and found a garden hoe. He came back to the room to see Iman still holding the pillow, which was now soaked with blood, over Eno's face. Iman then told RA to strike Eno in the face with the metal head of the hoe. RA then raised the hoe and struck Eno in the face once. This stunned her and she stopped resisting. Iman and Ramad then forced themselves upon Eno while RA stood guard by the door. After the two men were done, they told RA that it was his turn. He tried, but he wasn't able to. He would later say the blood coming from Eno's face turned him off, so instead he began to bite Eno's legs and breasts. Now, what I'm about to explain is absolutely sickening, and this is a massive, massive trigger warning. Ramad picked up the gardening hoe and inserted it into Eno's genitals. He then began to kick the metal head of the hoe, resulting in the handle impaling and rupturing Eno's internal organs, ending her life. 90% of the hoe handle had been kicked inside Eno. After killing her, the three took turns washing blood off their bodies. And before leaving the crime scene, they took Eno's things and phone and piled her clothes on top of her where her body was. They did this to mask the smell of decomposition that would happen in the next couple days. When Eno never turned up to work, her friends began to worry. They called her and texted her but didn't get a reply. They then went to her place and knocked, but when Eno didn't answer, they broke into the place. And once inside, they were met with a disturbing scene. Police were called, and Eno's body was taken away and an autopsy was conducted. The cause of death was from massive internal bleeding caused by the garden hoe. 23 inches of the handle had been kicked inside Eno, damaging her heart, lungs, and many other organs. You can see the x-ray photo of this on the internet, but I can't show it on here and it's awfully disturbing. In a matter of days, all three boys were arrested and charged with the murder of Eno. All three boys had a reason to why they killed Eno also. RA claimed he did this because Eno rejected him and he didn't like the arranged marriage. Ramad said that Eno had been rude to him, and Iman said that she ignored his text messages. The police then forced the men to reenact the murder, which was televised, and the video of the reenactment could be found on YouTube, and it is super disturbing to watch. Both Iman and Ramad were found guilty and sentenced to death by firing squad. RA was also found guilty, but due to his age, he was only sentenced to 10 years in prison. I also have to warn you that if you research this case further, images of the crime scene are very easy to find and they are extremely disturbing. What these three boys did to Eno is just horrific, and I can't even imagine the fear and pain she must have been experiencing. May Eno rest in peace. You did not deserve this at all.
Just don't understand how someone can be killed and it's all caught on camera, yet the killer is just never found. I'm talking about the murder of Liz Barraza. She was setting up for a garage sale in the early morning hours of January 25th, 2019, when someone dressed in a disguise was caught on multiple cameras walking up to Liz and shooting her 4 times at point blank range. I truly just don't get how this case is still unsolved. So at around 6 that morning, Liz gets a coffee from a local Starbucks. She then drives back to her house in Tomball, Texas in the Princeton Place subdivision and starts setting up for a garage sale. Liz wanted to do the garage sale to earn some extra money for her and her husband Sergio's 5th wedding anniversary that would take place in a few days. To celebrate, the two were going to Universal Studios in Orlando. Just the night before, Liz put out 2 signs for the garage sale, one at the entrance of their neighborhood and one just down the road. So at 6:47 that morning, Liz and Sergio start setting up for the garage sale before Sergio leaves for work. Around this time, a dark-colored Nissan Frontier truck is is seen entering the neighborhood and parking down the road. A few minutes after Sergio leaves, the truck is seen driving towards Liz's home. Whoever's driving does a 3-point turn and parks behind Liz's car, and then they get out and start walking towards her. I want to point out what this person appears to be wearing. It's definitely a disguise of some sort, but it looks like they're wearing a wig and possibly a robe with some pointed boots or heels. At this point, Liz is still setting up for the garage sale, but she sees this person walking towards her, and you can actually hear Liz say good morning, which was captured on her doorbell camera. This person then says something to her for about 6 seconds before pulling out a revolver and shooting her 4 times. The first shot goes through the right side of Liz's neck. She's then shot twice in the chest, and as Liz drops to the ground, the killer stands over her and shoots her once more point blank in the face. The killer then runs back to their truck and drives off. Meanwhile, several of Liz's neighbors heard the gunshots and called the police. And while the neighbor across the street is on the phone with the operator, he sees the truck drive away. Liz's entire murder was caught on several of her neighbors' security cameras. I'm going to play part of that footage right now, so here it is. What's insane though is that just moments after the shooting, the killer then does a U-turn and drives back by Liz's house just to make sure she's dead. Police arrive just a few minutes later, but at this point, the killer is gone. Liz was then taken to the hospital where she sadly died a day later. Police initially thought that this was a robbery gone wrong, but nothing was taken from her house or from the garage sale. And what's terrifying is that the killer was caught on security footage casing Liz's house before the murder as well. As early as 2 the morning she was killed, to be exact. The Harris County Sheriff's Office now believed that Liz's murder was planned because not only was the killer in disguise, but they also used a revolver that doesn't leave behind any shell casings. Adding to the theory that this was planned was the fact that Liz didn't publicly advertise that she was hosting a garage sale. It was never posted to her social media, and only a few people knew that it was going on, outside of the 2 signs that she posted just the night before. Investigators began pulling video footage from commercial businesses nearby, and the killer's truck was caught on camera several times leaving the scene, but it was eventually lost in an area with no camera coverage. This was such a brutal murder that police began questioning why someone would do something like this, especially to Liz. Authorities combed through Liz and Sergio's digital footprint, but they found no evidence or really any reason why someone would want to kill her. Liz was a member of a Star Wars charity group and was described by so many people as being unbelievably kind. She didn't have any enemies, and because of this, her family believes that this was a murder for hire plot. Sergio states that he knows that he's the prime suspect in many people's eyes, but he denies having anything to do with Liz's murder. He moved out of the home not long after and remarried about a year and a half after Liz was killed. He says he connected with his new wife over similar experiences. His new wife had reportedly just lost her sister, so they bonded over their grief. Sergio says that he and his new wife have both taken polygraph tests and have passed them. I just will never understand why someone would do this to her and how they were literally caught on camera killing her, yet they've never been found. It's now been 5 years, and whoever killed Liz is still out there.
The incident with Rey Mysterio and El Perro Aguayo Jr. This was a wrestling match, a tag team match, where it was going to be one of the biggest wrestlers here in the United States, being Rey Mysterio, one of the biggest wrestlers in Mexico, being El Perro Aguayo Jr. Everybody's obviously excited to see this wrestling match, and it's going normal, it's going fine, they're going at it with each other and stuff, but in one specific part of the wrestling match, which is about to be the end basically, you see Rey Mysterio want to set up like his signature move, and it goes off script, because you know how wrestling is scripted, so it goes off script, and El Perro Aguayo Jr., he like falls out of the ring, but he falls awkwardly. He basically like hit the edge of the arena with his back.
Oh my gosh, bro.
He goes back on the arena because he knows that it was like not part of the script, and then that's when he gets drop kicked. And when he gets drop kicked, he goes against the ropes like he was supposed to, but he just kind of falls unconscious. Everybody's still like cheering and shit, you know. He's just knocked out. Rey Mysterio does his signature move. It just kind of goes over Perro Aguayo Jr.'s head because he's still like just laying there. Even somebody comes over and starts shaking him and like saying, "Yo, bro, wake up, wake up, wake up." The wrestling match finishes and Rey Mysterio's team wins. Instead of cheering, everybody's still concerned because he has not moved from that same position. At this point, everybody goes over to him and realizes that he's not conscious, right? And he died. Live on TV.
Did Rey Mysterio get backlash after this?
Yeah, so after that whole incident happened, because it was an accident at the
end of the day,
a lot of people were sending Rey Mysterio death threats. He was even thinking about quitting wrestling completely.
However, coined the phrase, "You can't make this stuff up," might have known the story of real-life boogeyman, Albert Fish. A slight, elderly man with grey hair. No one suspected the kindly single father of being sadistic child murderer and cannibal.
Someone here. While you're here, we'll keep you busy. You'll wash for us, you'll clean for us, cook for us, you'll for us. That's your choice in a nutshell.
The woman in that video was one of the victims of serial killers Leonard Lake and Charles Ng. These two were two of the most depraved murderers to ever haunt America. So from the outside looking in, Leonard Lake was a totally normal guy. He was married, he went to Bible studies, attended church. But back at his remote cabin in California, Leonard Lake and Charles Ng were abducting sometimes entire families, murdering them and keeping the women hostage for days, weeks at a time. So obviously there's a lot to this story. It's really disturbing. There were over 25 victims attributed to Leonard and Charles, and the two of them would literally abduct entire families. They would then kill the men and the children and keep these women hostage in a bunker on the property. Eventually though, a serious mistake by Charles led the police to the compound. And that's when they arrested both of these guys. They started digging up the grounds and they discovered the corpses of those 25 plus victims. And when they searched the home, they also found a library of videotapes. These videotapes graphically show the interactions between Leonard Lake and his victims. There are a lot of tapes. They're all on YouTube. You can go watch them. But they are incredibly disturbing. Just watching Leonard talk to the camera about his thoughts and desires, listening to the way he treats and talks to these women that he's abducted, and knowing the amount of carnage that this man and his friend caused is crazy. As a side note, Leonard Lake actually took his own life a couple days after being arrested because he had sewn cyanide pills into his clothing. So he never really was truly brought to justice.
Did you know the opening to this horror film was based on a crazy true crime case? The opening scene of Jeepers Creepers features two people driving down the road with a van tailgating them. It's a scene that is reminiscent of a reenactment done on the Unsolved Mysteries program in 1991. The case in question involves Ray and Marie Thompson, siblings who were just driving down the road one day outside of Michigan. In their rearview mirror, they noticed a suspicious van. Now, the van initially passed them and they did notice that he seemed to be in a hurry. Shortly after, they passed the van again, but this time they noticed it was parked outside an abandoned schoolhouse. The driver appeared to be holding a blood-soaked sheet. Although they did drive past, yet again they noticed the van shortly after in their rearview mirror. It was driving aggressively close to them for the next 2 miles, just like the opening scene in Jeepers Creepers. The siblings turned off the highway and discussed what they should do. They decided to turn the car back around and try and get a good view of the number plate to report to the police. However, when they approached the van again, they noticed that the mystery man was crouching down and changing the number plates. They were also shocked to see inside the open door of the van was covered in blood. They immediately called police, who were actually already on the hunt for the male van driver and his wife. Dennis Depew was the man in question. In 1971, he had married Marilyn. They did have 3 children together, but Dennis was very controlling. Marilyn filed for divorce in 1989 and Dennis moved out. However, Dennis would regularly freak Marilyn out by letting himself into the house. One day she came home to find him sat on the sofa, even though she had changed all of the locks. On Easter Sunday, 1990, Dennis arrived at her house to collect 2 of the children. However, Dennis became angry at Marilyn during the visit and ended up pushing her down the stairs. With their children watching on in horror, Dennis beat Marilyn and dragged her out of the house. Their eldest daughter ran to a neighbour's house to try and ring police, but it was too late. Dennis drove off with Marilyn in the van, lying to his children that he was taking her to the hospital. Responding to the eyewitness reports, the forensic team taped off the schoolhouse crime scene. They discovered Marilyn's body the day after by the roadside. She had been shot in the head. Police were now on the hunt for Dennis as he drove across the country. On March the 20th, a woman returned to her house to see her boyfriend's van on the drive. She believed that her boyfriend's name was Hank. He told her that he needed to rush home as his mum was very unwell. Meanwhile, the TV in the house was playing an Unsolved Mysteries episode. The episode featured news of a man called Dennis who was wanted for murder. Hank, whose real name was Dennis, was desperately trying to distract his girlfriend from the episode. He was terrified that if she saw the TV, she would recognize him. At this point, Dennis drove off, but the police were on his tail. A 15-mile high-speed car chase ensued. Officers rammed his van and forced him off the road, but seconds later, Dennis pulled the trigger and unalived himself.
This mother hunted an entire cartel for killing her daughter. This is Miriam Rodriguez, and she hunted down 10 cartel members for killing her daughter. On a fateful day in 2012, Karen Rodriguez, who was Miriam's daughter, was driving her truck when suddenly 2 trucks encircled her. 2 men then came at her with guns and dragged her from the car and into theirs. Later, the 2 men took her to the Rodriguez family home and tied her up. They were about to proceed with their ransom plan when a family friend dropped by and witnessed the scene. At this point, the kidnappers decided to abduct both Karen and the family friend. After the kidnapping, Karen's family started receiving threats and ransom demands. Miriam and her family had no choice but to take out a loan from a bank to pay their daughter's ransom. This is because there were so many ransoms in the city that the bank was giving out ransom loans. Miriam and her husband were then told to drop the ransom money off at a local medical facility. They waited, but nobody showed up. Miriam then demanded to meet with the gang members, and they agreed. The meeting took place at a local restaurant, and she met with a man who tried to demand more money from her without saying where her daughter was. They then asked for an extra $2,500. The family continued to wait, but Karen never returned. Miriam knew at this point her daughter Karen would not be returning. The heartbroken mother then vowed to find every single one of her daughter's kidnappers. The family friend who was also kidnapped was let go shortly after it happened because he offered no value. Miriam then pressed him for the physical appearance of the gang members, and he did. This was enough to confirm that the man she met with, who was named Sama, was involved in her daughter's disappearance. Miriam then spent hours searching on Karen's socials looking for any clues about her kidnapping. Miriam then came across a picture of Sama with a girl at an ice cream shop 2 hours away, so she decided to go there. She then located the store and began stalking it regularly. She then recognized the woman from the picture with Sama and studied her work hours, patiently waiting for Sama to show up. Finally, when she spotted Sama coming to the store, Miriam waited to follow the couple home and get their address. Miriam then had to get closer to these people, so she went undercover. She cut her hair and dyed it red and put on an old government uniform. She then went door to door in Sama's neighborhood doing fake surveys. She then spent some time identifying and locating more gang members from Sama's crew. And before you know it, Miriam located a picture of Sama with a group of his fellow gang members. On September 15th, 2014, Miriam's son was closing his shop when he noticed a familiar face. It was Sama. He then immediately called his mother. Sama was then arrested and quickly gave the names of the people involved in Karen's abduction. And finally, they got word of Karen's location. The gang members said, "I'm willing to take you to the ranch where they killed and buried them." When they went to the ranch, they found Karen's scarf, car cushion, and her femur bone, confirming her death. Miriam continued to try and find her daughter's killers though. Miriam traced a member named Flores back to his hometown and discovered he attended church, so Miriam started stalking the church. Eventually, she contacted the authorities over her findings and Flores was arrested. But Miriam isn't done there. After receiving a tip, Miriam located a man selling sunglasses. The man recognized her and ran away, but Miriam came prepared. She ran after him, tackling him to the ground and pointed a gun at him. Miriam detained him for an hour, waiting for the police to arrive. After hearing about what Miriam was doing, the cartels began to threaten her, which made her seek help from the Mexican government and request protection. During an incident, some prisoners were able to escape the jail where her daughter's kidnappers were being held. And on May 17th, 2017, Miriam was found dead outside her home. Miriam was shot with 13 bullets by the same prisoners who escaped. In her quest to seek justice, Miriam became a symbol of courage and resistance against the criminal underworld. This goes to show the love a mother has for their kids. Miriam was going against a very powerful cartel, and in my opinion, definitely won in more ways than that. Rest in peace to Miriam, you will never ever be forgotten.
If you can make it through this entire video, I guarantee you won't be able to sleep tonight. A man was working late at night when he received a notification that there was detected movement on his son's baby monitor. He checked the app, expecting to see that his 3-year-old son had just coughed or sneezed loudly. But when he looked at the baby cam, he was shocked to see his son and wife acting very strange. They were sitting on the bed together, both glaring at the camera with blank, emotionless stares. He assumed that the camera was just frozen, but noticed that his wife and son were blinking every couple of seconds. He then called his wife to make sure everything was okay, and she told him that she was in bed with her son and he had gotten scared a couple of minutes ago and came into her room crying. The husband was stunned. He slowly told his wife that they were both in their son's room, looking into the baby monitor. Just as the wife was about to respond, there was a loud screech and the call ended. The man then went to check the baby monitor, and it was complete static.
What are some of the craziest things people have confessed to at the end of their lives? Well, in this series, I'm sharing some of the wildest ones I found. And I cover lots of spooky and true crime stuff on this page, so follow along. This one comes from a man whose uncle was in a really devastating car accident. He had sustained life-threatening injuries, and the EMTs knew they had to act fast. Apparently, the uncle knew things were not looking well, so he beckoned the EMT closer. He had something he wanted to say. And so the EMT leans in really close, and the uncle says, "Tell my wife Wendy is my daughter." So who is Wendy? Well, apparently Wendy was the neighbor's 4-year-old daughter. The man did end up passing away from his injuries, and the word did get to Wendy's family. The parents divorced, but apparently the poster writes that the legal dad is still very much a part of Wendy's life. I think I would have taken that secret with me. And if you've been enjoying this series, you'll love the full podcast episode I did on them.
This is Jack Torrance. He was a writer and recovering alcoholic who once accepted the job of caretaker at the Overlook Hotel, an isolated hotel located in the Rocky Mountains, which closes its doors to the public every winter. He took the job for some peace and quiet so that he could finish writing a manuscript. At the interview, Jack was made aware that the hotel's previous caretaker killed his family and himself whilst working at the Overlook. Not one to be deterred, Jack took his wife Wendy and his son Danny with him to start his new job. Danny started to have frightening visions of ghosts and occurrences at the hotel. He was revealed to have a unique telepathic ability called shining. Jack slowly lost his mind and started drinking again. After a scary encounter in room 237, or 217, Jack tried to kill Wendy. Head chef Dick Halloran ended up being killed for trying to help Danny, as he shared the same shining ability. Wendy and Danny escaped to a hedge maze, and eventually left the hotel in Halloran's snowcat. Jack ended up trapped in the maze, and eventually froze to death.
I remember seeing this photo of a restaurant employee cutting raw meat on the concrete floor outside, and I thought, what the heck is going on? This happened in Gwinnett County in Georgia, and the name of the restaurant is New China. This employee is seen casually cutting raw meat behind the restaurant outside. When this photo was taken, it was reported to the health department, but the restaurant argues that this employee was off the clock and he was cutting his own meat that he was gonna take home. Which, if that's the case, like, why would someone even do that? There's not even a cutting board. The restaurant also clarified that all their employees cook in the kitchen and that customers have nothing to worry about. This employee was later fired, and after investigating, they realized that none of this food was actually served to customers. The health department did not shut down this restaurant because there was no apparent threat to public health. Which really does make me question this, because if one of your employees is eating off the floor, then I really do wonder how food is being managed in the kitchen when no one is actually looking.
If she ever asks you this one question, always say no. A hospital receptionist was working late one night when he saw a strange figure approach him in the darkness. When they came closer, it appeared to be a pale woman with a wide smile and soaking black hair. The receptionist asked the woman if she was there to see someone. She simply nodded and said, "Do you reject the Trinity?" He replied, "I'm sorry." She then slowly backed away and left. A few hours passed, and a little girl came to his desk from her hospital room. He asked her if she was feeling alright, and she said that she did not like the new nurse. He said, "Sweetie, what do you mean?" And she told him that the nurse was asking all the children the same question, and they were all chanting yes, yes, but she was too afraid to answer. The man then sprinted to the hallway where the children were staying, and none of them were to be found. The hospital then went into lockdown, and the only remains of the children were their clothes laying on their bed.
Scary facts you'll wish you never knew. Part 2. Being buried alive used to happen so often that people invented safety coffins, with a rope you could pull to ring a bell and let people know you're still alive. If you get a blood transfusion and get the wrong type of blood, one of the symptoms is a sense of impending doom. In 1975, the CIA had a heart attack gun. It would give someone a heart attack, then the dart would melt after entering the body, leaving no trace behind. One reason that crows and ravens are so associated with death is because they would often follow armies as they marched to battle. Being extremely intelligent, they realized that a large group of armed men marching in one direction meant that there would be a tasty meal to eat soon afterwards. Polar bears are one of the only animals that are thought to actively hunt humans. Around 30% of people reported missing have actually been killed by the person who reported them missing. Throughout your lifetime, you walk past around 36 murderers. 30 people die every year, getting crushed from shaking a vending machine. Finally, the astronauts aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger most likely didn't die until they hit the water miles below the initial explosion.
Erica's family told her they were going on vacation in Lake Tahoe. when in reality they were dropping her off at a troubled teen wilderness program that she would not survive. Erica Harvey was just 15 years old when she was dropped off at the Catherine Freer Wilderness Program. The program promised Erica's family that they could get her off drugs, but the staff were not trained very well. The first day that she was there, the kids all went on a really long hike, and Erica started showing symptoms of dehydration. Erica was also on antipsychotic medication, which was something the staff did not have any experience with. So when she started speaking gibberish and her eyes rolled into the back of her head, they thought she was being dramatic. And when she fell over backwards into a ravine, they completely ignored her. Finally, after an hour, they went to go check on her, but Erica didn't have a pulse. The staff called a medical helicopter, but they didn't